This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris, and today I'm making some grilled steak soft tacos. When we usually think of tacos, we think of ground meat, but for these soft tacos, we've grilled up some really great seasoned steak, and we've made some fresh salsa and a little bit of chopped avocado and some lettuce to go on top. When I barbecue, I like to use this metal tray that I have, and the reason I like the metal is that it conducts the heat, so when I put the hot meat on here, it tends to keep it hot while I bring it from the outside into the kitchen to cut it up to serve. But when I go out to start grilling, I like to take the metal tray and cover it with some plastic wrap. And the reason I do that is that way when I put my meat on here to take it up, as soon as I get it on the barbecue, I can take my plastic off, and I have a fresh tray that I can now put my meat on. If you were to put your raw meat right on here, you'd have to bring it back in and wash it or have a second platter, and that just seems like a lot of extra work. Now for these grilled steak soft tacos, you want to get a steak that is great for grilling. Now there's a couple of kinds that I use. One is a skirt steak, and today what I'm using are some of these tri-tip steaks, and I've got between 1 pound and 2 pounds. I'm going to put these little steaks right on my plastic covered tray. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to salt and pepper the meat, and then I'm going to flip it over and salt and pepper the second side as well. Next I have 2 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to mince that on top of my meat, and I want to try to get a little bit of that garlic on each piece of meat. Then I have a teaspoon of some dry oregano leaves. I'm going to sprinkle that over the top. A tablespoon of olive oil, and I'm going to drizzle that. Then I have half of a lime, and with my fork I'm going to poke that into the lime, and I'm going to drizzle that lime juice. Now you can see there's a lot of the seasonings and the oil that's on the plastic and that is not on the meat. And I've really only seasoned one side. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the steaks and I'm going to roll them, kind of pressing the seasoning and the garlic and the olive oil and the lime into both sides of the steak. Now at this point we want to let these flavors start to marinate the meat a bit. So you have a couple of choices. One is you can go ahead and light your barbecue now and get it nice and hot and just leave these at room temperature for up to 20 minutes. Or if it's going to be a little later that you're going to start your barbecue, you can put another piece of plastic wrap over the top of this and just put it in the refrigerator until it's time to grill. Now while our meat is marinating, we're going to make our fresh salsa. Let me show you how I do it. When you're cutting up fresh tomatoes for your salsa, one of the things that comes about is you have a ton of liquid in these tomatoes. So here's one of the ways that I get some of that liquid out. I start by getting the bowl that I'm actually going to mix all the ingredients in. I set that out and I put a small strainer on top of it, and I'm going to keep this right next to me on the board. Then I have about 1 pound of really nice and ripe red tomatoes, and I'm going to cut these into a medium-sized dice. Now as I cut the tomatoes, I'm going to gather them up and I'm going to put them in the strainer. Now we've got all the tomatoes in the colander. We're going to continue to add more ingredients on top of it. And next we've got 1 jalapeno. And when you're using jalapenos, you have to be careful because the membranes in the seeds are really, really hot, and you don't want to get those oils. They're going to get on your fingers, but you don't want to put your hands near your eyes or anything. And then once I've cut the jalapeno in half, I take my melon baller and I just pull the membrane and the seeds right out of the jalapeno. Now, if you like a lot of heat in your salsa, you could certainly chop these seeds and membranes up because they'll give you a ton of heat. I like to have my salsa on the medium to mild side, so I'm not going to use those. So I'm going to move those out of the way, get all the seeds off my knife, and I want to actually mince them up because you don't want someone to get a mouthful of jalapeno and kind of blow their mind. So what I do is I cut each half into these little thin strips like this, and then I gather the strips up in a little bundle, and then I take my knife and I just run it through, making teeny little cuts. And then once I've gone through one pass, I go through and chop it up even finer. And then I'm going to take that and put that right on top of my tomato. And also at this point, I'm going to get the seeds and membranes off my board, and I'm going to rinse my hands because I don't want those hot oils to stay on my fingers. Next, I'm going to finely chop up a half a cup of red onion, and I'm going to add that into my colander as well. Then I'm going to mince 1 clove of garlic on top. I've got some fresh cilantro, and I'm going to mince up 1/4 cup of that. And I'm going to put that on the top. Now at this point, we're just going to let all these ingredients sit in the colander, and I can let these sit here for an hour if I want them to. Right before we serve it, we're going to add a few more ingredients, but I want to give it time to get some more of the juices out of these tomatoes and into the bowl. Now it's time to start grilling our meat. So I'm going to give it to my husband, Kevin, and he's going to go barbecue for me. Thank you, Kevin. And while he's doing that, I'm going to finish off the salsa. Now I wanted to show you how much juice I've actually gotten off my tomato, so I'm going to pour that in a little bowl because I don't want that. It kind of dilutes the flavor, so I'm just going to throw that out. And now in my nice clean bowl, I'm going to take all my ingredients and I'm going to pop them right in. Now I'm going to finish off with some more ingredients. So I'm going to start by measuring out a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of sugar, and this seems like a pretty unlikely ingredient, but it really does help bring the sweetness of the tomatoes out. Then I've got 2 limes, and I'm going to cut those in half. And again, use my fork, and I'm going to juice those 2 limes right over my tomatoes. And now with a large spoon, I'm just going to toss all those ingredients together. Now many times with this salsa, I make a double batch. I have one batch that I use to serve on the soft tacos, and then I have another batch that I use to serve with chips, and it really makes a nice hors d'oeuvre. And then while Kevin is grilling the meat, I'm going to get my last ingredient together, which is a little bit of iceberg lettuce, and I'm just going to chop that up finely so that it makes almost like shreds. Now if you like, it's also great to add some diced avocado on these soft tacos. So I just cut my avocado in half, then I take a large spoon and I just scoop out the whole half of the avocado in one piece if I can do it. And then I'm just going to run my knife through it like this, and then this way. And then I'll run my knife through it just a little bit so that I get a nice fine dice. Now when it comes time to assemble our tacos, we need to have some sort of tortilla. So either choose corn tortillas or flour tortillas, both work great. And if it's possible, try to find handmade tortillas. They taste really, really good. Now Kevin's brought the meat in, it looks fantastic. I'm going to let it sit here in my pan for about 5 minutes just to let it rest before I cut it up. Now after the meat's rested, I'm going to put it on my carving board and I'm going to cut it in some very thin pieces. And the reason I want them to be thin like this is that makes it easy to bite into, because you don't eat a taco with a knife and fork, you just hold it in your hand. So you want the meat to be fairly bite-sized. So now we're going to build one of our soft tacos. So I'm going to take one of my tortillas and I'm going to lay some strips of meat right down the center. Then I'm going to take some of the diced avocado, put a little bit of that in, then some of my lettuce, and then some of the salsa. And now I have a plate. I'm just going to put that right in there to let it stand up. And then you can just keep making them. Now another thing you can do is if you don't want to pre-make them, you can just put all of the ingredients out on the table and let everybody build their own taco. Well, if you'd like to give these grilled steak soft tacos a try at home, just go to our website and go to the Easy Entertaining show notes, and I'll have the recipes there for you. And as always, if you have any questions, please send me an email. See you next time.